Hello, welcome back to News Channel 5. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight we have a special guest joining us for a special report on Oklahoma's incarceration system. Victoria White, a student policy analyst at the University of Oklahoma, will be sharing information regarding Oklahoma's continuously growing female incarceration problem. Here with us now is Victoria. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us, where does Oklahoma stand in terms of female incarceration?
So Oklahoma currently leads the nation in highest incarceration rates, but most importantly, I would say highest female incarceration rates. This is mostly affecting our female population because they are the mothers of our children, they are the bearers and heads of our households, but they're also the teachers of many children in our society. And we see that even the Black and Native American women, who are some of our most minority groups in Oklahoma in terms of economic disadvantage, in terms of poverty levels, are being even more disproportionately affected by the sentencing laws in the state of Oklahoma at 2 and 3 times their actual rates of population in the state. So it's something that we need to change now if we want our state to become better and if we want our mothers to stay in the houses of the children that we're trying to teach and become leaders of our state.
Are there certain areas of our state more affected than others?
Definitely. I would say out of the 77 counties in the state of Oklahoma, our rural counties with the smaller populations and then the lower income levels in terms of per capita and per household income levels are the most affected. And I would say this is due just to some archaic laws that might still be in existence, to stricter judicial systems, to maybe not as high of employment opportunities, and then of course the poverty level that does exist in those places. One of the laws that is, I believe, should not be allowed anymore is the fact that many of our smaller communities are allowed to, if they change their sentencing for the person to a felony, they can then send that person from the jail system or the county level outside to a jail or a prison system that could have maybe a larger population or a bed amount so that they could send that person out. And frankly, all that does is allow that county or that jurisdiction to create more felonies so that they don't have to pay the taxes on that person who they're trying to incarcerate. This only leads to more felonies in that jurisdiction and more people who are being charged with crimes that they shouldn't have in the first place.
Who is most at risk in this situation?
Again, like I said, minority groups, our Native American and female populations, women who aren't educated, especially in some of these smaller places. We notice that most of our females that are in some of our higher population facilities in the state of Oklahoma are coming in even without a high school education. And the ones that are being abused, whether it be sexually, mentally, physically, in their relationships, or even outside relationships, and many are coming from relationships of divorce. So mostly our women are minority women as well, but then their children too, because their children are relying on their parents, relying on their mothers for trust, education, their success and well-being. And if their mothers aren't there to help them do that, then how do we expect those children to succeed either?
How did this problem start?
I would say definitely this goes back to the 1980s at a more national level when we saw Ronald Reagan and his war on drugs and inciting fear in the minds of our American people. As a result, this of course trickled down from Washington, D.C. to Oklahoma, and we see many of our jurisdictions say, well, let's start charging people for petty crimes, whether it be a small amount of marijuana or cocaine. And of course the crack cocaine disparity very disproportionately affected African Americans, particularly African American females who are holding small amounts of cocaine for their significant other, and then they're the ones who are being, as a result, charged because they are the easiest access to the court system to charge. They're easier to find than the drug leaders or drug organizations are, but they're the ones that are trying to fend for their families. I mean, they're in an economic position. We saw in Oklahoma, as a result of some of these laws, many of those females and the mothers were heading into jail and couldn't provide for their families anymore. We see broken households. We see women in poverty who then try to maybe steal a couple things here or there, and then they're being charged with petty crimes of robbery and theft. And as a result, that cycle just keeps on going.
What are some possible solutions to fixing this issue?
I would say one of the first solutions outside of trying to mend the judicial system, which of course takes efforts on both sides of the aisle that we can't always rely on, and I would ask for more transparency in terms of the data that comes from the Department of Corrections. Currently, all the data that they provide is the number of people that they are currently housing, and then the number of people that they are transporting, and the number of people that are in lieu or are still in the county system. We don't know anything about these people. We don't know their demographics. We don't know whether it's female or male. We don't know what they're being charged with. So how can we expect that a non-governmental organization can come in and try and mend some of these situations when we don't even know anything about the population? The second, I would suggest increasing specialty courts that have accessible resources, whether it be therapy programs, maybe resources like getting a GED or access to vocational programs, and then of course the drug rehabilitation side of it as well, the accountability level, and that does exist in many of our counties. And then even on top of that, making it more accessible in the sense of geography. I mean, many of these counties are being serviced by other counties, and it makes no sense to have a drug treatment program in a county where you don't even live, especially for people who maybe it's hard for them to get places, maybe they don't have a reliable source of transportation, maybe they have an hourly job that they can't leave for. So if we have these people relying on other counties for their treatment centers, it doesn't really make sense, and it doesn't work, and it's not a reliable source of success for that person. And then finally, the third solution, I would say we need to be putting school counselors who are educated in the needs and resources for students who have parents who are incarcerated, and then all of our students as well, of course, so that the students in the schools know that there is someone that they can go and talk to, and that person knows the steps of success to teach to the students who are in more of a vulnerable position.
Are any organizations actively doing some of this type of work?
I would definitely say there is an organization in Tulsa called New Hope, Oklahoma. They are doing many great things, whether it be summer camps, after-school programs. But one of their important things that they're doing in 8 of the Tulsa public schools is teaching through this curriculum about how to teach students who have parents who are incarcerated how to find a support system outside of their parents, whether it be a support system from their teachers, whether it be from friends, but most importantly from themselves. Knowing that they don't need somebody else to rely on, they have themselves, and they know the best tools for success, helps them know that there is somebody who's out there advocating for them and listening to them, and they have that kind of place of consistency every day after school through this program.
Any last parting words of information?
I would have to say that there's more that we can do outside of the judicial system. So instead of maybe sitting by waiting for the Republicans or the Democrats or whoever to try and come to this agreement, we can be doing things in terms of our own advocacy, in terms of non-governmental organizations, in terms of just being an ally for others around us. So instead of just sitting by and waiting, there is more we can do now.
Thank you for being with us tonight, Victoria. We greatly appreciate your time. Next, join us as we give this week's weather forecast at 9. Back to you, Julie.